Welcome builders, this is D&D Builds, providing us an outlet for all of our ridiculous Dungeons & Dragons builds, so we can stop driving the people in our lives insane with these ideas. Today we're going to be diving back into the world of Square Enix with Final Fantasy VII. And honoring the fact that the game just had its 25th anniversary this week, we're going to do a double build. We'll be building out two of the most notable characters from this game, Cloud and Sephiroth. So let's dive into this 2-for-1 video. While these two characters do have a lot in common, these builds are going to be quite different. But the one bit of crossover is going to be their background. They were both a member of Soldier, while Sephiroth was definitely a higher rank than Cloud. Knowing that they were both a member of Soldier does make picking this background easy. And as an extra bonus, this background gives you proficiency with land vehicles, so you can ride Cloud's motorcycle. But now that we've sorted out the background, let's dive into Cloud's build first. Although there is an appearance of Cloud in the Kingdom Hearts games with one demonic wing, most of his depictions are a bit more straightforward, and we're going to stick with those. So if you wanted to go with the Kingdom Hearts version, you could grab Aasimar, but we're going to go with Human. And since he's been altered by the Soldier program, we're going to go with Human Variant. As far as the feat we're going to take with our Human Variant choice, Cloud has one of the most iconic swords in all of gaming, the Buster Sword. I can't think of any sword that would better qualify as a great weapon other than this. So we're going to take Great Weapon Master. Great Weapon Master will make it so if you score a crit, or if you drop a creature to 0 hit points, you can make an additional attack as a bonus action. This is going to be super useful with our build. And additionally, when you want to hit really hard with your Buster Sword, you can take a -5 penalty to your attack roll and get an additional +10 damage on the hit. In Final Fantasy, Cloud can cast a ton of spells, but he really focuses on using materia for most of those. Otherwise, he's all about just hitting really hard with his sword. With that in mind, let's jump into some stats. Like we mentioned, he does tend to focus on attacking with his Buster Sword, so we're going to be bumping up Strength to the max with 15, and then getting another +1 from our Human Variant choice, bringing us to 16. Dexterity, we're going to put a decent amount of points into with 14. Constitution, we need to bump up because he's got to take some hits, so we're going to bump that to 15, and then another +1 from our Human Variant. Intelligence isn't really what Cloud is known for, so we're going to just dump that, and then we're going to set Wisdom to a bit of a baseline, so that way he does have some ability to hopefully fight off the mental intrusions from Sephiroth. Then lastly, we have a Charisma, but he's just kind of a brooding soldier, so we're going to dump that too. And as we mentioned, we're not going to focus too much on his materia usage, so we need to focus more on his physical abilities, and frankly, he's super straightforward. Outside of two specific moves, which are highlighted in the Smash series, abilities like Blade Beam, Cross Slash, and Omni Slash are the things we're going to have to solve for. Cross Slash is pretty easy because it's really just attacking a bit more, but Blade Beam and Omni Slash are going to be the tricky ones. We'll save those for later. As far as our first level, we're going to take Fighter. It seems pretty straightforward. He doesn't go into a blinding rage when he's attacking, at least not usually, and he's well trained thanks to the Soldier program. At level 1 in Fighter, you get proficiency in pretty much all weapons and all armor. However, since we never really see Cloud in anything super heavy when it comes to armor, we're going to focus on medium armor, because even though it looks like he's just wearing leather for the most part, he does have a bit of metal on his shoulder, so we can use that to try and lean into some medium armor and make use of just the +2 we have in our decks. And obviously the weapon we're going to take here is a great sword. You get a handful of skills, but most of them don't matter too much. You can grab some animal handling to do some chocobo racing if you really want, and maybe do some history for looking into your past. At level 1, you do get a fighting style, and we're going to lean into that Buster Sword usage with Great Weapon Fighting. This will make it far more likely that you will roll at least above a 2 on your damage die. Additionally, you get Second Wind, allowing you to heal yourself a little bit, as if you're casting Cure. Level 2, you get Action Surge, so you get a whole nother action to use when you want to, which does cover most of the Cross Slash ability. And then finally, we get a Martial Archetype. This is usually where we would dive into a bunch of specifics, but Cloud is pretty straightforward, so we're just going to take the Champion archetype. This gives you improved critical, which increases your chance to get a critical hit, and then we get to move right along to level 4, where you get an ability score improvement. We're not going to go level by level in this because we have 2 characters to get through, but fighters do get a ton of ability score improvements. with 7 improvements overall. So as we level up, we're going to put 2 of those into strength, bringing it to 20, 2 of them into constitution, bringing that to 20, and allowing you to take a few more hits. And then, since we're pretty much sticking with medium armor, we don't need to put much more into dexterity outside of maybe for saves. So we'll put 2 more into wisdom, bringing that to 14. That way, Cloud's a little better at fighting off those mental intrusions by Sephiroth. We'll save that last ability score improvement for later. At level 5, you get extra attack, which is twice as useful when you use action surge. At level 6, you get that ability score improvement we talked about. At level 7, your martial archetype of champion gives you remarkable athlete. This allows you to add a little bit to your physical skill checks and increases the distance you can jump. At level 8, you get another ability score improvement we covered. And then at level 9, you get indomitable, which will allow you to re-roll a saving throw. Then at level 10, your champion archetype will give you an additional fighting style. Since there's not a whole lot to choose from that really fits the build, we're just gonna grab defense. That way you're a little harder to hit and you can block a few more attacks. At level 12, you get another ability score improvement we already covered. Then at level 13, you get indomitable again, so you can roll it one more time, hopefully saving you from death in those critical moments. At level 14, we get another ability score improvement we already covered. And then at level 15, our champion archetype gives you superior critical. So now you get a critical hit even when you roll an 18, which if I do my math right, that means every single attack gives you a 15% chance to critical hit. And with how many attacks fighters usually get by the end of their build, especially with action surge, I'm liking those odds. So level 16, we get one more ability score improvement that we already covered. And then at level 17, we get another action surge and another indomitable, so you can use these abilities more often. At level 18, you get Survivor. This will allow you to consistently regain hit points as if regen was casted on you. Now finally at level 19, we get the one ability score improvement we didn't cover. And we're finally going to address Blade Beam and Omni Slash. So if we use Smash as a reference for Omni Slash, there's 2 ways that it's used depending on what version of Smash. One is simply just using an action surge and attacking a whole bunch of times really quick. So that's a little easy. But the other version of Omni Slash summons a bunch of blades around you. I think the best way to do this is if we use this ability score improvement to take Magic Initiate. We can make use of our Wisdom score by diving into the Cleric spell list. In the Cleric spell list, you can get 1 cantrip and 1 first level spell. We can get both Blade Beam and that other version of Omni Slash from this spell list. Blade Beam seems pretty darn close to Guiding Bolt. This spell causes a flash of light to streak towards a creature of your choice within range, and it gives advantage on the next attack roll. And to cover our bases with Omni Slash, we're going to take Sword Burst as a cantrip, and at this level it's going to do 4d6 damage. Granted, it's not as powerful as using an actual limit break, but visually it's going to do the job. Sword Burst creates a momentary circle of spectral blades that sweep around you. So visually this is pretty spot on. And then finally we hit level 20 where you get your 3rd extra attack. So you get 4 attacks for every action. You can take Action Surge, so you get 8 attacks total, and with your superior critical, you are very likely to crit, meaning that with your Great Weapon Master, you can probably use your bonus action for 1 more attack, bringing your total amount of attacks up to 9. And I have to note, with 9 attacks, not even factoring in crit damage, your average damage with Great Weapon Fighting Style and Great Weapon Master Feat, and your strength of +5 with every attack, you're going to average 225 points of damage in a single turn. That will complete our Cloud build. But now it's time to dive into the one-winged angel himself, Sephiroth.
Sephiroth. この時を待ちわびたぞ。さあ、南東に絶望を送ってやろう。
And since Sephiroth is the one-winged angel, there's no other race to pick to start this build other than Aasimar. They are more of an angelic type of race, and they have a few sub-races to choose. But I think Scourge Aasimar works best. Their ability Radiant Consumption allows you to radiate light while your wing is sprouted. This works perfectly for Sephiroth's more ultimate type of abilities. While this would usually force us to take 2 points in Charisma and 1 point in Constitution, a new adjustment to the rules popped up, allowing you to adjust where those points actually go, with the idea that maybe dwarves that hung out with elves are a bit more dexterous, or maybe you're an outlier amongst your race that just doesn't quite fit in. So with that in mind, we're going to allot these points a little differently. But before we jump into that, we need to focus on one main motivation that Sephiroth has. And no, it's not to pull off a crazy sneak attack with that insanely long sword, because that would probably break the rules of most sneak attacks, so we're going to be avoiding Rogue, even though that would give us expertise in intimidation. No. His real motivations are a little different. He wants to bring down a meteor and bring about destruction with it. While we didn't focus on the materia usage with Cloud, since this is a prime motivation of Sephiroth, we can't ignore it. And with that in mind, there's a spell called Meteor Swarm. It's a 9th level spell, and only sorcerers and wizards get access to it. And while many people fear Sephiroth, making a fairly good case for Charisma, I have a different build in mind, so we're going to go with a wizard. So that means we need to take those 2 points that we're going to go into Charisma and put them into Intelligence. So here's the starting stats. He is also well known for using his incredibly long sword, so we're going to put 15 points into Strength, and then we're going to take an additional +1 that was our +1 into Constitution and change it over to Strength. So now we get 16 Strength. Our Dexterity is going to be 12, so that way you're not super easy to hit, but we can't completely ignore it. Constitution's going to be a solid 14, just so you have some hit points to deal with, especially since we are planning to go Wizard. Wizards are known for being particularly squishy, and we want to avoid that a little bit. And then lastly, we're going to put 14 points into Intelligence and get the additional +2 from our race. Meanwhile, we're just going to dump Wisdom and Charisma, so that way we can focus on what really matters for this build. Wizards in general focus on their spell casting, so that's going to be the main highlight of this build, but we need to focus on an arcane tradition, and there's no way we can avoid the incredible music that accompanies Sephiroth. That, mixed with his use of his Masamune sword, we're gonna go with Blade Singing. Blade Singing gives you a few features here, starting with training in war and song. This will gain you proficiency with light armor and proficiency with one-handed melee weapons. With this ability to use a one-handed weapon, we're going to grab a long sword, because I don't know how else you'd describe Masamune other than a really long-ass sword. So now you have your choice of donning leather armor, or you can cast mage armor. It's totally up to you, and both of them are going to work great. This also gives you proficiency in the performance skill, but that doesn't matter so much. Next up, we have the feature Blade Song. You can invoke the magic of the Blade Song, and I can't help but picture this just being the equivalent of Sephiroth's theme music accompanying him whenever he activates it.
Let's finish this.
Your Blade Song lasts 1 minute, and this gives you a bonus to your armor class equal to your intelligence modifier, an increase in your walking speed by 10 feet, which makes it so when you dash forward with your sword, it's a little more intense and intimidating. You also get advantage on dexterity checks, and lastly, you get a bonus to your constitution saving throws to maintain concentration on spells. This bonus is equal to your intelligence modifier, so we might not need quite as much constitution as others, but we still need just enough to help boost our health. At 6th level, this arcane tradition gives us extra attack, so you can swing with Masamune one more time, or you can cast Cantrip in place of one of the attacks. At 10th level, you get Song of Defense. This will reduce damage you take and help mitigate the low health you're going to have as a wizard. Then the last feature you get in this class is Song of Victory. You know I couldn't help but mention the victory battle music. So now that we have our class and arcane tradition chosen, let's just quickly cover where we're going to put our ability score improvements. We get 5 ability score improvements as being a wizard, and we're going to be taking wizard all the way to 20 since we really want to make sure we can utilize that meteor swarm spell. We're going to put 2 of those into intelligence so we can max it out to 20. We're going to put 2 of them into strength so we can max that out to 20. And then we're going to put our last one into Constitution just to get a little more health. Wizards do get the most amount of spells they can learn, with a minimum total at level 20 of 44 spells. Not to mention you can copy additional spells into your spell book throughout your travels, so the possibilities are almost endless. However, the actual amount of spells you can have prepared is going to be your intelligence modifier plus your wizard level, bringing your total to 25. We're not going to go through all of those here because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, but just pointing it out so we don't really have any concern about restricting our spell list at all. And on top of this, at max level, you're going to wind up with 5 cantrips. So let's start with those. We're going to take one of the newest cantrips, Mind Sliver. This is perfect for how you infiltrate the mind of Cloud throughout the game. You may also hear Sephiroth call upon your despair. We can think of this in 2 ways, either with Toll the Dead or Sapping Sting. Sapping Sting is from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and it saps the vitality out of you, taking minimal necrotic damage, but forcing you to fall prone. Or Toll the Dead, forcing your enemy to hear the impending doom of their own death. That seems like it'll work pretty well. We can also lean into using your sword a bit more with Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, which will cover pretty much the entirety of the cantrips. Since there are a few incarnations of Sephiroth, we're going to focus on some of the core abilities as we go through the actual spell list, and we're going to be leaning on the game Smash Brothers to help guide some of the decisions. Outside of Smash, he does have the ability to fly and call upon despair, but Smash can help guide our choices a little bit, as Sephiroth's abilities in Smash are Flare, Mega Flare, or Giga Flare, Shadow Flare, Blade Dash, or Octa Slash. Then he does have a shielding ability, and then of course his final smash, where he summons a giant meteor. So with that in mind and the actual concept of the character, let's dive into some of these spells. The shield ability is pretty easy, we can just take shield. The Shadow Flare ability is a little more complicated, as it surrounds you in a few orbs and might wind up actually sucking into you and hurting you later. This could be viewed as some continuous damage or a few other interpretations. We can go with Witch Bolt from our first level spells, which might be pretty useful as this just provides continuous damage. Lastly, from the first level spells, we want to take Silvery Barbs. This is a newer spell, but it magically distracts a creature, creating momentary uncertainty and encouragement in another creature. Additional spells we could take from the first level are Silent Image, to project an image of yourself and really mess with people's minds, and Cause Fear, as anybody that's aware of Sephiroth's presence seems to really understand the impact he has, and no one within their right mind isn't afraid of him. You could also grab something like Magnified Gravity if you really wanted to, but that's a bit more specific to a type of materia, so that's a bit more iffy. For our level 2 spells, we cannot avoid Crown of Madness. It is way too fitting for some of the ways that Sephiroth messes with Cloud. And keeping with that theme, I would also grab Phantasmal Force, and maybe even Mind Spike, as these are all mental attacks, which either do damage or just cause them to feel like they're going insane and seeing things that aren't there. And lastly, from this level, I would take Shadow Blade. It can better embody the idea of Masamune, as you create a sword of solidified gloom in your hand. But one other one we could grab if you really wanted to would be Misty Step, so it makes a bit more sense how you dash so quickly towards enemies. For our level 3 spells, I would obviously grab Fear. This kind of keeps with the same theme. We can also grab Fly, as you're floating around and attacking your enemies. You can grab Haste, as this will just improve your normal combat ability and how quickly you can attack. You could grab Speak with Dead to have a quick chat with the Ancients, but that's not super necessary. However, you gotta grab the infamous Fireball, as this will cover your Flare, Mega Flare, and Giga Flare. And lastly, I would grab Melf's Minute Meteors. One, because there's no way that Sephiroth's gonna avoid anything that has to do with meteors, and two, it creates 6 tiny meteors in your space, which can mimic the Shadow Flare ability, as they hover in place and can be called towards your enemies. Onto your 4th level spells, we've got Confusion, just to keep with the whole mentally messing with Cloud thing, and also maybe Phantasmal Killer, as we're sticking with that theme. Also, I have to just mention the Gravity Sinkhole, as that is more gravity magic, but again, not really something we're focusing on here. In our 5th level spells, we have a few choices, and sticking with that whole mental theme, we're going to grab Dominate Person, as well as Modify Memory, because it seems like Sephiroth has quite the hold on Cloud's memories and thoughts, which also lends itself to Synaptic Static. This is almost too spot on for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We also obviously can't ignore Telekinesis at this level, and finally we should probably grab Steel Wind Strike. This allows you to essentially dash through an enemy and a few others, slashing with your incredibly epic sword. Then as we get to level 6, we can grab Eye Bite to force panic into your enemies. I think we can avoid Otto's Irresistible Dance, but we can grab Mental Prison. And lastly, we have to grab one of my favorite spells, Tensor's Transformation. This will really boost your combat ability and make you a force to be reckoned with while swinging your sword. Tensor's Transformation boosts your temporary hit points, gives you advantage on all of your attack rolls, gives you additional damage when you hit with an attack, and it would give you extra attack, but you already have that from your class. The only downside here is that you suffer a level of exhaustion after you're done using it, unless you succeed on a saving throw. Jumping into our level 7 spells, I would grab Delayed Blast Fireball. This will really encapsulate the Giga Flare. You could grab Project Image, but that's kind of redundant with all the other spells we have right now. However, I would grab Power Word Pain. I think this is pretty ideal for calling upon somebody's despair. And then lastly, from this level, I would grab Mordekainen's Sword to improve the usage of the incredibly epic sword that you have. Outside of maybe Feeble Mind in level 8, there's not a whole lot of great choices. You can maybe consider Reality Break, but frankly, I would skip most of this level altogether, unless you're really eager to grab Dominate Monster. Finally, we get to level 9 spells, and what this whole build was all about, Meteor Swarm. This causes fiery orbs to plummet to the ground at 4 different points you see within range. Each creature that gets hit by one takes 20d6 fire damage and 20d6 bludgeoning. There's a reason it's a level 9 spell. And if you want an additional level 9 spell to choose from, you can always grab Blade of Disaster. I think that really encapsulates the epic weapon Sephiroth wields. But now that we have a level 20 Cloud and a Sephiroth that can radiate light while brandishing his wings and call down meteors, I think we've finally completed our builds for Cloud and Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. I'm really happy I had the opportunity to do this build on the week of the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that way you don't miss out on any of my future builds that I come out with every single week. And if you're interested, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Until next time, this has been D&D Builds, hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next game.